So welcome back to another video, and we are back on the field, not for any other reason then. It's a lovely day and we thought we'd come out and talk about the government's plans to control homes using cyber technology to manage appliances. But it's not a conspiracy video. We've done lots of those. This is just a general update about new requirements that have been put in place for manufacturers of solar panels, air source heat pumps, air conditioning, basically any heavy duty appliance that can be in a property. So the government has set out some guidelines that mandate that these appliances from 2028 need to be smart enabled, and what this means is that they can communicate back to energy suppliers or network operators to manage the grid's loads, because there is an ongoing issue with the grid, which is that the grid is under immense pressure, and we've got two choices really. We can spend a load of money trying to balance the grid, or we can get smarter. So this is actually a really good idea because it's going to provide multiple benefits. One of them is going to be the grid becomes more stable, which means we have a much lower risk of having blackouts, and we're not going to have big power surges and problems. And it also means money in the pocket for consumers, because when you take part in these schemes, you will access lower energy prices, and you might also even be paid one-off payments for allowing your system to be temporarily shut down while the grid manages the loads, and then once that event has passed, you'll reactivate. Now, this isn't a mandatory scheme for consumers, it's mandatory for manufacturers. They have to build in this technology, but for a consumer, you can opt in or opt out. So don't worry, you're not going to have random appliances turning off without your consent. If you want to be involved in the scheme, you can just opt in to be part of it. Now, what does it mean for a consumer once you have opted in? Well, this hasn't been fully laid out yet, but what we assume is essentially you'll get access to cheap energy rates. Now, there are plans on the market like this already. Something like Octopus Agile is a half-hourly energy tariff, i.e. every half an hour they change the rate depending on what's going on with the grid. But that's quite a niche product. I think it's in like a beta phase. Agile does require the end user to be pretty savvy and be watching those times and making sure they don't get caught out with high rates. Now, this scheme will probably be a lot more simple than Agile. It'll all be automated. You'll be on a standard tariff with events baked in. So when they happen, you'll either get some free energy later on, some compensation, or reduced costs for participating in the scheme. Now, why is a scheme like this super important to the grid? Well, it's all to do with the stability of the grid. Previously, our grid was powered by gas turbines or coal-powered steam turbines. And what turbines do is put something called inertia into the grid. They're a constant spinning, like a flywheel, carrying lots of energy. When the grid hits a bump, that energy is soaked up within the inertia of the flywheel. Now, that worked really, really well for years when we had turbines, but as we're moving to a more renewable, sustainable grid, we're losing inertia. And when we lose inertia, what it means is when we get shocks to the system, we haven't got that mass of energy to soak them up. It's a very much like a binary grid. It's on or it's off. So what we need to do is to prevent blackouts, to prevent big issues in the grid, is flatten the curve of our demand, and that is the purpose of a scheme like this. When everyone else is using loads of energy, those who have renewable energy systems, that have batteries, that have air source heat pumps, if they can temporarily turn them off, let everyone use the energy and try and flatten that curve in the grid, then we get some level of stability back, which means we don't have to spend billions on upgrading the grid. Now, there are already schemes in place like this, but they're much more basic. There's one called DFS, it's the Demand Flexibility Service. And this was done by pre-alerting consumers about events that they could opt into. So the National Grid would say, at 7 o'clock tonight, there's going to be a grid event and you can be paid to participate, i.e. don't use the grid at 7 o'clock for half an hour. This scheme went down really, really well with those who knew about it, but it wasn't really a mass adoption scheme because many people didn't understand it, or many people didn't have appliances that worked with it. The purpose of this scheme is to make the whole thing automated. So as a consumer, if you've opted in, you probably don't even need to do anything. You might get an alert to say a grid event has happened, or you might not. Now, I actually have a version of this scheme installed at my property because I have something called a heatable hub, which is a unit you can attach to your system to participate in these grid flexibility schemes. If you want to hear more about this, we did a whole video on it that you can watch by clicking the pop-up here or the link in the description. And what these do is automatically put you into grid events. And so far this year, I've earned £101 from grid event or flexibility services.
There was no point in showing the camera that.
Really?
You didn't see anything. I'm just going to put it on the screen now. Look, can you just gesture over there?
What do you mean?
Gesture over there. That's how much.
What?
That's how much you've saved.
What do you mean, gesture?
You've saved that much.
I don't know what you mean.
Like, I'm going to put the number there.
I've saved £100. Now, I wasn't alerted to any event. It just happened. It just looked at my home battery system and said, you've got enough power in here. We know, or we think, what your loads are going to be. And we're going to disconnect you from the grid and just use the battery to power the home, and I got paid income for that. Now, £100 for 6 months, £200 a year isn't bad on top of my already existing solar and battery savings. So if you're a general consumer who doesn't have a hub, this scheme will bring these things to you without any extra work required. So when is this scheme going to launch? Well, the government's plan for change, which is the scheme name, is set to launch in 2028. So manufacturers, as of today, have about 3 years to get onto this open protocol system. And that is a key component of the scheme, is it needs to be available to everyone. So all manufacturers need to communicate in a universal way that isn't exclusive to them, meaning as an end user, as a customer, you are not limited to certain suppliers or certain tariffs. This is a universal scheme. So if I'm with supplier 1 on this tariff and I want to move, I'm not going to lose the benefits of my flexibility service. I'll still get those automatic payments. So this is a really exciting scheme, and it's definitely beneficial for consumers. If you're not interested in it, you can just opt out, but if you are interested, then you're going to be earning extra money without having to do much, as long as you have renewables. And on that point, to access the scheme, you are going to need some renewable devices. So either air source heat pumps, solar panels, batteries, I think even air conditioning units are included. If you want to get a quote for that, then head over to the Heatable website and we can quote you for any of those renewable installations. And if you've enjoyed this video, give it a like. If you don't want to miss future videos, then make sure you are subscribed to the Heatable YouTube channel, and we'll see you again soon for more consumer news or install videos.
You can have anything that you desire, magic, and you know you're the one who can put out the fire. You know